Good. It's big stretch hours. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. I'm joined here by Freddy today to talk about literally what is Hex No One Escapes Death good for. This was brought up by Zoe, and we did have a video on it, but the game has changed so much since even a year ago that we're going to do a follow up and talk about changes that have been made and also where the perk stands now. Especially in terms of my personal opinion, because my opinion has been changed. I used to think this perk was extremely strong. And to a point it was. It used to run whole games in the end game, especially before the end game existed. But now, it more or less, because of the way people play and because of the new perks that are available in the game since then, survivors have an easier time playing around it, and more or less, it only makes up for a small difference in play throughout the game. Where if you do worse, the worse you do, the more NOED is helping you, and the better you do, the less NOED is helping you. Let's start by reading the perk. A hex rooting its power on hope. You are animated by the power of your hex totem when the survivors are on the verge of escaping. Once the exit gates are powered, if there is a dull totem remaining on the map, the hex is applied to it. While this hex is active, survivors suffer from the exposed status effect, and your movement speed is increased by 4%. Once the hex's effect is revealed to the survivors, its hex totem's aura is shown to the survivors at a range of 4 meters. This range increases steadily over the next 30 seconds to 24 meters. Couple changes. Now you get to see its aura when you find out that it's active, and 4 meters is the same distance that the killer can see an aura from a dull totem when Undying is in play. So if you know where that is, you know where it starts. After that 30 seconds, 24 meters is about the size of a boon. You'll be able to see it in the range of a boon, and hopefully you can wrestle it away from the killer or escape in that time. It used to be this perk came into play. It had a 7% speed boost and gave exposed and did not reveal its aura. You had to go find totems. You had to work together to cleanse them specifically, and it was a fucking hassle. Now we have boons. We can bless totems to take up their space that you cannot place a hex on a totem that has a blessing on it. Now we also have Pentimento, which allows you to redeploy totems as Pentimento totems. We have several perks that create totems on the spot, and more perks that disable totems as certain conditions are met. So there's a lot more at play, and NOED has been seeing a lot less play as time has gone on. So the effect now is if you go through a game and you happen to be falling behind, you don't have as many downs, you don't have as many hook states, there's still a bunch of pallets on the map. When NOED comes into play, you get your movement speed and exposed, and you get to down somebody, and then maybe you get a couple more scores after that. It's a good way to rope survivors up in the end game, even before the gates are open, and get people on a hook to make up for your lost time, especially if you're running something cheeky like Endgame Trapper or Endgame Freddy here, which we'll talk about in a moment. If you're doing well in the game, you have a lot of hook states, and all of the pallets or most of the pallets have been taken care of or gone. You have a bunch of loops that are open or closed depending on your liking, and the survivors are on their last legs and injured. In that instance, your 4% speed bonus isn't really doing that much work. The survivors just got to get out. Even if you had NOED in that, even if you didn't have NOED in that situation, you would still have an overbearing advantage just by the game state that you've cultivated. So in that way, NOED Escapes Death finds its balance, because now it's no longer about bringing the strongest thing to fix up your game in the end game. Now it's about how much can it actually give you based on how well you did. And to that effect, a lot of the times I don't even reach the end game state if I'm doing really well. kind of takes up a perk slot as a detriment. Other detriments is that you have to leave totem open, so you can't go for like heavy totem builds, and you probably shouldn't bring it with like builds that would like you probably shouldn't bring it with Plaything. Probably not as good with Pentimento. In fact, definitely Pentimento kind of gets in the way. What it is good for is endgame stuff. Lately, if I bring it at all, I prefer to bring it as the only hex. Although this one also benefits from Ruin because we're playing endgame Freddy. Just some simple add-ons and remove the map offering if one shows up. This is about chasing survivors around while they're getting generators done. Tinkerer is going to give us a lot of chases. Ruin is going to slow down the game until they take care of it. And nothing else happens until the end game when no one escapes death activates. And you down somebody, the survivors get an indicator that they have exposed in a hex. And maybe they try to open the doors to leave, in which case you follow up with the Blood Warden to block the exit gates. And then, until they cleanse the hex, everybody's locked in the game for a minute, exposed with somebody on the hook, and that is probably a fantastic position to be in. You can choose your end game from there at that point. But these are the things that Nobed is good for. At the end of my last video, I said bring it on its own, and it should do fine by itself. You get a decent amount of power for it, but that's also no longer true. If you bring this perk on its own, you're going to get left behind, and the survivors are probably going to escape, aside from like 1 or 2 lucky downs. So it is not as powerful considering what survivors can do lately. Thanks again to Zoe Z for bringing this to my attention, and, you know, try out Noed in your games and make survivors salty.